Welcome back to Bible class. It's going to be another great day. And I'm pretty excited about this one because it's part of yesterday's Reigns Forever. Can you imagine getting up every morning and it was raining? And it rained for 40 days straight and 40 nights straight. It didn't stop. You'd feel like you were in Seattle and you'd come out singing Pearl Jam and Nirvana. And that would be the whole deal. And so man, can you imagine being on a boat that size, with that many animals in it, and not going insane? And the only people you see was family? That would be a pretty long social distancing. But then it says the waters are on the earth for another 150 days before the ark rests on Mount Ararat, right? And so the ark's floating along, and it hasn't rained for 100 days, another 100, and then 120 days, and then 130 days, and then can you imagine what it would feel like if you were floating around for like 190 days, and then all of a sudden everything stopped? If you've ever been on a treadmill, and you've like ran on a treadmill, and then you got off of it, your legs feel all warbly, I think it would probably feel kind of the same thing. And so when the ark stops on Mount Ararat, Noah sends out a raven. Now, I always thought he sent out the raven and then stopped on Mount Ararat, but the Bible doesn't say that when I was reading it this time. So that's amazing. I learned something new, or Mandela effect, and so you have the raven and it flies around and back and they don't, and then it just kind of stays away. Then Noah flies out a dove, and the dove comes right back. It has nowhere to land, so it comes right back to Noah. Noah then sends it out 7 days later, and after 7 days it comes back with an olive branch. Now, how exciting would this be? Is if after all this time in the ark, all of a sudden you see a tree. You see a piece of a tree, and you haven't seen anything like this for a while. I mean, there was probably crazy celebrations going on. They probably, if they had a kazoo, they'd be blowing their kazoo, all right? And so it was exciting. Then 7 days later, he sends out the dove again, and it doesn't come back. And so Noah says it's time to leave the ark. And so the first thing Noah does is builds an altar. He builds an altar to God, and he thanks him. Just like Daniel thanked God 3 times a day in his prayers, Noah thanks God for seeing him through this crazy time. Then God promises Noah, I will never flood the earth again. And he says, you know that rainbow in the sky you see right now? Which is pretty much impossible to have without rain, because all the water that's still in the air, the light shines through and it makes all those pretty colors. It's like when you got those triangle prism things. But without rain, you can't really have a rainbow. And so God says, you see that rainbow? That's my promise. I will never do this again. God says, I will never, ever flood the earth again. That is not the way I will do it anymore. And so now we know that just the way the water purified the earth from evil, that's the same way, if you read in 1 Peter chapter 3, that baptism cleanses you and me and makes us saved and makes us pure and makes us whole. Because our salvation has nothing to do with us, but everything to do with God. And so that's what's neat about baptism, because it's that one step in salvation that we don't do. Everything is done for us. And just like God purified the earth and didn't need any human help, God purifies us and doesn't need any human help. It is time for story time. And we're going to try something a little bit different today. And welcome to story time. You see, we have this really neat thing. It's called an easel, and it can hold the flip chart for me. And I think I should be able to do some really neat movie magic with it to make sure we can actually see the flip book this time. But if I can't, well, If at first you don't succeed, try again. And remember, failure is important. And so I want to make this point really, really fast, then we'll get right to it. Failure means you messed up. You made a mistake. But if you're trying something new and you made a mistake, that means you're growing and you're learning. School doesn't really teach you this too well. If you get a bad grade, well, you get in trouble. But in real life, the more you are trying something that's too hard, the more you mess up, but you're trying to grow and you're trying to be better, the better off you're going to be. The more you grow, the more experiences you have. One of my really good friends here at Eastwood is named Gene. And Mr. Gene, I'm pretty sure, has failed quite a bit in his life, but he also has a really rich life and a really amazing life. And he says, okay, I messed up. Let's try something new, or let's make it better. And that has made his life so much richer and so much fuller. So never, ever be afraid to make a mistake. Lollipop keeps his promises. It was a warm summer day in the town of Tum Tum. It was a good day to swing with Princess Gwendolyn in the park, or sail boats with Prince Hubert, or ride a bike to visit the Lollipop Dragon in his cave. But there was no time to play for the boys and girls of Tum Tum to play. The children of Tum Tum had promised to help Lollipop. Lollipop had promised to help Prince Hubert and Princess Gwendolyn. Prince Hubert and Princess Gwendolyn had promised to help the king. Today a garden must be planted in honor of the queen's birthday, declared the king. Who will help surprise the queen? I will, said Hubert and Gwendolyn. I will, said Lollipop. You can count on me. The queen shall have a beautiful garden. We'll help you, Lollipop, cried all the children of Tum Tum. Together, we'll get the job done. So, all of the children of Tum Tum, Prince Hubert, Princess Gwendolyn, and Lollipop started to work. There were weeds to pull and flowers to plant, rocks to move, and a fence to make. Lollipop went everywhere he was needed. He was a wagon, a taxi, a teacher. Lollipop was keeping his promise. The work was getting done, but with the boys and girls of Tum Tum helping each other, the work wasn't work at all. It was fun, just like play. Everything was going well. The royal clock struck 12. Everyone was hurrying to be finished on time. Then suddenly, Arthur and Richard Wellington, in Mulvane we call that Smellington, asked to be excused. We must go to our grandmother's house this afternoon, they said. Lollipop waved goodbye and thanked them for their help. The Halsey twins, Tim and Tom, were tired of working. Lollipop, we'd like to go play in the park for a while, they said. Lollipop was sorry to see them go, but he waved goodbye and thanked them for their help. Lollipop, said Karen Taylor, I need to go home and finish a poem for the Queen's birthday. Lollipop waved goodbye to her and thanked her for her help. Just then, Lollipop heard a scream. Ah! Molly Windsor dumped a bucket of water on her brother David. Whoop, she cried, I'm sorry. Molly and David were off to get dry clothes. Lollipop waved goodbye and thanked them for their help. One by one, the children had to leave. Lollipop waved goodbye to all of them and thanked them for their help. Finally, there were only Prince Hubert, Princess Gwendolyn, and Lollipop left to finish the work. Hubert and Gwendolyn were worried. Lollipop, how will we ever get the garden beautiful in time for Mother's party? Don't worry, he said. I'll think of something. I promised the king a beautiful garden, and I will always keep my promise. The Lollipop Dragon always keeps his promise. Keeping your promise is one of the most important things you can do. Lollipop thought and thought. I got it, he shouted. We'll sing while we work. How will that help? Gwendolyn asked. Well, said Lollipop, if we sing while we will work faster.
And if we sing a happy song, we won't worry about how much there is to do. Before we know it, all of our work will be done."
Hubert and Gwendolyn agreed to try singing while they worked. Gwendolyn sang as she watered the flowers. Hubert sang as he painted the fence. And Lollipop sang as he made a walkway. "Hurrah, hurrah, we're finished!" shouted Hubert and Gwendolyn a short time later. They made so much noise the king came to see what was going on.
"What a wonderful job you've done!" he exclaimed. "Lollipop, you will be our honored guest right beside the royal family at the Queen's birthday party."
What a fun party it was, too, in the beautiful colored garden. Thanks to Lollipop and Hubert and Gwendolyn, who kept their promise. Be strong and do not give up, for your work will be rewarded. 2 Chronicles 15:7. So Lollipop had a big decision to make. Was he going to follow through on his promise or not? Every day God makes the decision whether or not to flood the earth again or not. And God always keeps his promises. So he really doesn't have a decision to make because he's just not going to do it. What God says is true. What God says is real. And so that's what we must remember. If God says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. If God says he's not going to do something, he's not going to do it. You and I should be the same way. We should make sure that no matter what we do, wherever we go, or however we do it, we are good for our word. James 5:12 says, "Above all things, my brethren, swear not. Let your yes be yes and your no be no." And so basically we should never have to go any further than saying, "Yes, I will do that," or "No, I won't do that." Because people know that when we promise we're going to do something, it's done. So always follow through on doing what you say. If you tell your parents, "I'm going to clean my room," clean your room. If you're going to clear the table, clear the table. You guys are amazing. Remember, you are God's prince or God's princess. I love you. We're getting so much closer to coming back to worship together here at the church building. It's going to feel like Noah stepping out of the boat and coming and seeing you guys. I can't wait. Remember, obey your parents. Have a great day. Bye-bye.